Logan Roy dies on a private jet somewhere over the Atlantic, and within hours, before the body is even on the ground, his children start calling board members, not to grieve, to lobby. Succession ran for 4 seasons. Critics called it the greatest drama of the decade, but on the money game, we watch it differently, as the most accurate depiction of how corporate power actually gets lost and taken. They confused ownership with control, and that confusion cost them everything. They grew up inside this empire. They sat in its boardrooms. They watched their father run it for decades. They owned pieces of it. But ownership wasn't enough. And here's the thing. This isn't a story about a dysfunctional family. It's a story about how corporate power actually works, about a gap in the system that most people never see until it's too late. Today, we're going to show you exactly how that gap works, and why it's the most expensive mistake in business. To understand what the Roys were actually fighting over, you need to understand how corporate power is structured. The common assumption is simple. You own the company. You control the company. The more shares you have, the more power you have. That's not how it works. When a company is publicly listed, ownership is split into shares. If you own shares, you own a percentage of the company's value. You vote at annual meetings, but shares don't give you the authority to hire or fire the CEO. They don't let you block a merger on your own. They don't let you walk into a boardroom and tell 15 senior directors what to do. That authority sits with the board of directors. The board is typically 8 to 15 people, elected by shareholders to govern the company on their behalf. They meet several times a year and make the decisions that actually matter. Who leads the company, whether to approve an acquisition, whether to reject one, and they operate under a legal obligation called fiduciary duty. They are required by law to act in the best financial interests of shareholders as a whole. Not the founding family, not the company's legacy, shareholders, financially, full stop. This matters enormously for what happens in succession, because it means the board's decision to support the Gojo deal isn't a betrayal. It's them doing their job exactly as the law requires. Now add one more layer. The biggest shareholders in most large public companies aren't individuals. They're large institutional investors managing billions on behalf of ordinary people. When the board signals a recommendation on a major decision, these institutions almost always follow. They vote with whoever looks like the sound financial choice. So here's what the power structure actually looks like. Shareholders own the company. The board governs it. Management runs it day to day. 3 layers. 3 separate kinds of authority. They don't have to sit with the same person. For most of Waystar's history, Logan Roy held all 3. Dominant shareholder, effective board control, operational authority over every major decision. 1 man, 3 levers, total lock. The moment he dies, all 3 come apart simultaneously. His shares sit in his estate, managed by lawyers. His children still own their stakes. On paper, the ownership of Waystar looks exactly the same as it did the day before. But the control structure has collapsed. Because Logan wasn't just a shareholder, he was the gravitational center of the entire organization. His presence alone kept those 3 levers in one grip. Now that grip is gone, and into that vacuum walks Lukas Matsson. Matsson has been circling Waystar for months. His company, Gojo, is a global tech platform. Faster, younger, more valuable on paper than Waystar's aging cable and news infrastructure. He wants to acquire Waystar. He has the money, he has the strategic rationale. What he doesn't have, yet, is board approval. And this is where most viewers start watching the wrong fight. Everyone is focused on the siblings. Who did Logan name in his will? Who gets the CEO chair? Who does Roman actually support this week? These questions drive the drama. They're what makes Succession one of the best shows ever made. But they are not the questions that determine the outcome. The family drama matters emotionally. Structurally, only one question matters. Who controls the board? Because whoever controls the board decides whether Waystar stays in the family or goes to Matsson. Not the person with the most shares. Not whoever Logan mentioned in a letter. Not whoever wins the sibling argument this episode. The board. This is where corporate power becomes mechanical. What happens in the final season of Succession is a textbook contested acquisition, working in very specific steps that play out identically in real boardrooms every time a major deal is on the table. Step 1. The offer lands. Matsson makes a formal bid to acquire Waystar. The moment that bid is official, the board has a legal obligation to respond, not to ignore it, not to dismiss it because the family doesn't want to sell. They have to evaluate it formally and communicate their position to shareholders. The family's feelings are not part of the process. Step 2. The board evaluates. The board hires independent financial advisors to assess the deal. Is the price fair? Does it represent good value for shareholders? What are the risks of accepting versus rejecting? And here is the part that makes the Roys' position so precarious. A company without stable leadership is a company with a problem, and a problem is exactly what Matsson is offering to solve. Step 3. The board signals its direction. Before any formal shareholder vote, the board indicates which way it's leaning. And once the board signals support, institutional investors follow. They're managing other people's money. They vote with whoever looks like the sound financial choice. By the time shareholders vote, the outcome is almost always already decided, at the board level, in private. Now watch what Kendall does with this knowledge. He's not calling lawyers to explore a counterbid. He's not buying more shares. He's having private dinners with individual board members, flying across the country to meet them, making promises about the company's future under his leadership. Because he understands, even if he never says it directly, that the real battle isn't about family status or inheritance. It's about the board vote. That's where actual corporate power sits. Roman understands this. Shiv understands it too. And that's why all three siblings begin running separate lobbying campaigns at the same time, each one trying to win board confidence without ever coordinating with each other. That fragmentation is the fatal mistake, because a board facing a clean, well-priced acquisition offer on one side and a divided, leaderless family on the other doesn't face a difficult decision. It faces an obvious one. Now watch what Matsson actually does. And notice what he doesn't do. He doesn't try to buy the Roy family out directly. He doesn't attempt to grab shares on the open market. He doesn't go to war publicly. Instead, he works the board quietly and systematically. He meets with directors one by one. He frames Gojo as the future, a global tech platform with reach that Waystar's cable infrastructure can never match. He frames Waystar as the past, a legacy business built around a man who no longer exists. He lets the chaos inside the Roy family do his work for him. 3 potential CEOs, no consensus, leadership meetings that end in deadlock, a stock price under pressure. Matsson doesn't need to attack the Roys. He just needs to point at them and ask, is this the leadership team you want running a $50 billion company? He positions the acquisition not as a takeover, but as a rescue. And once the board believes rescue is safer than legacy, the family has already lost. Meanwhile, the siblings are each playing their own separate game. Roman is pushing himself as CEO while privately signaling support for the deal. Shiv sees herself as the bridge who can manage the transition, but Matsson has already moved beyond needing her. Kendall wants to block the deal, run the company, and prove he was always the rightful heir, but his case to the board keeps shifting. None of them is giving the board what it actually needs, a single, credible, stable answer to one question. If not Matsson, then what? The board doesn't have to love the Gojo deal. They just need to prefer it over the alternative. When the alternative is a family at war with itself, the board's decision isn't even close. The final board vote in succession is the moment most viewers experience as betrayal. Shiv votes against Kendall. Roman abstains. The deal goes through. As family drama, it feels like betrayal. As corporate governance, it was inevitable. By the time that final vote happens, the board has watched this family for months. 3 potential CEOs who couldn't agree on a candidate, a company without stable leadership, a stock price reflecting a business no one seems to be running clearly. And on the other side, a formal acquisition offer, a premium price, and a buyer who has done everything right in the governance process. Shiv doesn't vote against Kendall out of spite. She votes for the outcome the board was always going to reach. She just stops pretending otherwise. This pattern repeats constantly in the real world. Steve Jobs built Apple. The board removed him. Travis Kalanick built Uber. The board forced him out. Ownership didn't save either of them, because the board is not the same thing as ownership. The Roys had the shares. Matsson captured the board. That's the whole story. And the thing is, none of this was hidden. The rules were always visible. The Roys just never believed the rules applied to them. The Roys inherited wealth. Matsson captured governance. In billion-dollar corporations, governance beats inheritance every time. Shares create ownership. Board control creates power. Ownership built Waystar. Governance decided who kept it. That's not a plot twist. That's the money game. Subscribe if you want to understand how money and power actually works on Wall Street.